Eleanor smoothed the simple silk of her dress, a deep sapphire that shimmered under the opulent chandeliers of the Grand Regent's exclusive dining room. It was her son Ethan's 35th birthday, a milestone that should have been filled with warmth and celebration. Instead, as she surveyed the elegant, hushed space, a familiar chill settled over her. She knew, with a certainty born of long experience, that tonight would be less a celebration and more an endurance test. She arrived punctually, expecting to be met with at least a perfunctory greeting, but the headwaiter, with a slight bow, guided her directly to a table already occupied by her son, his wife Serena, and her grandson, Leo. They were deep in conversation, or rather, Serena was holding court. Eleanor was seated at the far end, almost an afterthought, a decorative but largely ignored fixture. Ethan, her dear son, barely registered her presence beyond a quick, distracted nod. His entire attention was, as always, solely on Serena, his glamorous wife, whose laughter, a little too bright, echoed lightly in the sophisticated room. Serena was, by all accounts, a dazzling woman. Tonight, she wore a shimmering silver gown that caught every speck of light, an expensive necklace glinting at her throat, and a perfect coiffure that seemed sculpted from polished ebony. She exuded an air of effortless superiority, and as she spoke, waving a manicured hand, her words dripped with privilege. "Oh, darling." Paris was simply divine. The service at the George's V, simply impeccable. Some people just don't understand proper treatment, do they? It truly elevates one above. Well, above mediocrity. She didn't look at Eleanor directly when she said it, but Eleanor felt the sting as keenly as if the words had been a slap. The recent European trip, a whirlwind of luxury hotels and Michelin-starred restaurants, had been Serena's favorite topic for weeks, a trip from which Eleanor, naturally, had been excluded. Eleanor merely took a sip of her water, her expression serene, though a knot tightened in her stomach. She turned her attention to Leo, her 12-year-old grandson, whose bright eyes seemed a beacon in the otherwise sterile conversation. "How's your soccer coming along, Leo?" she asked, her voice soft, attempting to draw him into a more genuine exchange. "Are you still playing defense? I remember playing a bit of field hockey in my youth. Quite a different game, but the strategy..." Before she could finish, Serena cut in with a sharp, almost imperceptible sigh. "Leo, darling, Grandma is just telling stories. It's not polite to ask silly questions when adults are talking about important things, is it? We were discussing the nuances of Parisian haute couture, which I'm sure is far more engaging than dusty old sports." She gave Eleanor a fleeting, dismissive glance, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Leo, a sensitive boy, visibly deflated, shrinking slightly in his seat, the casual cruelty of Serena's interruption was a familiar weapon, honed over years, used to subtly remind Eleanor of her perceived place. Serena, emboldened by Ethan's silent acquiescence and Eleanor's quietude, escalated her public humiliation. She began to lecture, not to anyone in particular, but with pointed pauses and glances in Eleanor's direction. One really must cultivate a palate for true elegance, you know. Not everyone appreciates the subtle complexities of a sommelier's selection or the artistry of a truly refined dish. It's a shame some people just aren't accustomed to this level of sophistication. It must be simply overwhelming. Her implication was clear. Eleanor, in her simple dress and quiet demeanor, did not belong here, lacked the proper appreciation for elegance, and was, therefore, an outsider. Eleanor felt a deep flush rise to her cheeks, a familiar wave of embarrassment washing over her. The hurt, however, was not just from Serena's barbed comments, but from Ethan's continued silence. He looked away, fiddled with his fork, and took long sips of wine, as if actively avoiding eye contact with his mother. His complicit silence was a betrayal, a wound that never quite healed. He used to defend her, long ago. Now, he simply let his wife chip away at his mother's dignity. Then came the final jab, delivered with a chilling sweetness that stripped away any pretense of politeness. Serena leaned across the table, her voice dropping slightly, but still audible enough for their small party. "Honestly, you're just a ridiculous old woman, Eleanor. You have no place in this family, not with our lifestyle. It's rather clear you struggle to keep up." The words, blunt and raw, hung in the air, a venomous pronouncement. This wasn't just about sophistication anymore. It was an outright rejection, a declaration of banishment. That was it. Eleanor felt something inside her snap, not violently, but with a quiet, decisive finality. The familiar ache of humiliation transformed into a clear, cold resolve. She would not endure another moment of this calculated cruelty. She would leave, with whatever dignity she had left. She began to discreetly scan the room for a waiter, intending to settle her bill herself and slip away unnoticed. Just as she was about to signal, a tall, impeccably dressed man, with silvering temples and an air of quiet authority, approached their table. It was Mr. Henderson, the general manager of the Grand Regent. He carried himself with the grace of a seasoned professional, and as he drew near, his gaze fell directly upon Eleanor. "Mrs. Vance," he began, his voice a smooth, deferential baritone. "A pleasure to see you this evening." Eleanor felt a thrill, a spark of anticipation, even as Serena and Ethan exchanged puzzled glances. Vance. That was her full name, the one used by those who understood her true identity. Mr. Henderson extended his hand, not with a menu or a wine list, but with a gleaming silver key card. "Your penthouse suite is prepared, as always, Mrs. Vance," he announced, his words ringing with quiet significance in the suddenly hushed space. "We have taken the liberty of chilling your preferred champagne, and your theater tickets have been placed on the dresser, just as you requested." A stunned silence fell over the table. Serena's jaw dropped, her perfectly made-up face paling as her eyes, wide with disbelief, flickered between Eleanor, the keycard, and Mr. Henderson. Ethan, too, looked utterly bewildered, a dazed expression on his face as he tried to process what he was hearing. The other guests at the table, a few cousins and aunts, simply stared, their forks hovering mid-air. In that singular moment, Eleanor realized it. The 12-year secret, the quiet, anonymous ownership of this very hotel, her sanctuary and her legacy, was dramatically, irrevocably revealed. A quiet satisfaction settled over her, a calm power she hadn't felt in years. She took the keycard from Mr. Henderson's hand, its cool metal a tangible symbol of her vindication. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice steady and clear, a stark contrast to the tremors she'd felt minutes before. She glanced at the untouched plate before her. "I think I've had enough dinner for one evening." She turned to Leo, giving him a gentle, reassuring smile. "Good night, sweet boy. I'll see you very soon." Then, her gaze, cool and unwavering, settled on Serena. A faint, knowing smile played on Eleanor's lips. "And Serena," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like glass. "Thank you for the lesson in elegance." It was quite illuminating. With a final, dignified nod, Eleanor Vance rose from the table, leaving her family frozen in their disbelief. She walked away, her head held high, leaving them to grapple with the shocking, undeniable truth she had so carefully concealed for over a decade. The soft chime of Eleanor's phone, usually a gentle notification of a grandchild's photo or a casual text from a friend, now sang a furious symphony. Placing her champagne flute carefully on the marble-topped table, she picked up the device. The screen was an angry constellation of red badges, dozens of missed calls, a cascade of frantic text messages. It was a digital riot, and at the heart of it were Ethan and Serena. Ethan's messages were a jumbled mess of confusion and burgeoning desperation. "Mom, what was that? Call me now. Are you okay? Where are you? What's going on? Mom, this is crazy. Please just explain." Each message grew more urgent, punctuated by an increasing number of question marks and exclamation points. He was clearly reeling, unable to reconcile the quiet, unassuming mother he knew with the woman who had just been addressed as the owner of the hotel. Serena's texts, however, were a different beast entirely. Initially, there was a furious burst of indignation. "What kind of stunt was that, Eleanor? Humiliating us. Do you know how embarrassed we are?" But then, With chilling speed, her tone shifted. The anger morphed into a calculating assessment, her mind already racing towards potential gain. We need to talk. As a family. What does this mean? What are the terms? We should discuss family dynamics, now that everything's different. The abrupt pivot from outrage to avarice was almost comical in its transparency. Eleanor scrolled through them, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. She had spent 12 years guarding this secret, believing she was protecting Ethan, protecting him from the corrupting influence of unearned wealth, allowing him to forge his own path. But looking at these messages, a stark realization settled over her. She hadn't been protecting anyone. She had been enabling their assumptions, their dismissive behavior, Serena's cruelty, and Ethan's passive acceptance of it all. The weight of the secret had been immense, but in retrospect, it had also been a comfortable shield, allowing her to observe them, unvarnished, in their natural state. Tonight, that shield had shattered, revealing not just her truth, but theirs. Her phone vibrated again, the screen flashing. Ethan, 18. She took a slow, deep breath, the taste of fine champagne still lingering on her tongue, and answered, "Mom! Finally!" Ethan's voice was strained, thick with a mix of relief and barely contained panic. "Where are you? What in God's name was that? Henderson. The penthouse. What is going on?" Eleanor leaned back against the plush cushions of the sofa, gazing out at the twinkling city lights. "I'm exactly where I belong, Ethan," she replied, her voice calm, almost serenely detached. "In my own hotel." A choked sound came from the other end of the line. Your own hotel? How long, Mom? How long has this been going on?" His voice was smaller now, the initial bluster replaced by genuine confusion. "Longer than you've been married, son," she stated simply, letting the implication hang in the air. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with the weight of years of unspoken truths. "But why?" Ethan finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Why didn't you ever tell me? Why let me think you were just barely scraping by?" There was a hint of accusation in his tone, a wounded bewilderment. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, picturing Arthur's kind, earnest face. "Because I wanted you to become the man you are based on your own merit, Ethan. Not on the back of someone else's fortune. Your father believed deeply in the value of work, of earning your way, of building your own character. I tried to honor that, but you watched me struggle. Mom." The accusations grew stronger, tinged with genuine pain. "You let me take out huge loans for college. When Leo was sick, you let me worry about medical bills. We lived in that tiny apartment for years, barely making ends meet with my salary. While you owned hotels? Why would you do that?" The indignation was clear now, the feeling of betrayal sharp. "Because handouts don't build character, Ethan," Eleanor reiterated, using Arthur's precise words. It wasn't a platitude, but a philosophy ingrained in her very being. They don't teach resilience, or resourcefulness, or the true value of what you achieve through your own efforts. Every dollar you earned, every challenge you overcame, every sacrifice you made for your family, those built you, Ethan. Not a trust fund. The line was silent for a long moment, punctuated by what sounded like muffled, agitated whispers in the background. Then, Ethan spoke again, his voice much smaller now, stripped of its anger, tinged with a raw vulnerability. "Serena, she's been awful to you, hasn't she?" The question hung in the air, a belated acknowledgement of a truth he had refused to see. The connection, finally made, between his wife's cruelty and his mother's perceived poverty. "She has," Eleanor confirmed, her voice devoid of emotion, and in doing so, she revealed exactly who she is, Ethan. Her character was laid bare when she believed I was a woman of no consequence. She could hear Serena's voice in the background now, sharper, more insistent. "Tell her not to do anything stupid, Ethan. Don't let her make any hasty decisions." Eleanor allowed a genuine, unforced smile to touch her lips, unseen by her son. "Don't worry, Ethan," she said, her voice laced with quiet irony. "I've had 12 years to think about this. And tonight, thanks to your wife, I finally have the clarity I needed." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your wife was right about one thing, though. I really don't belong at that table." Her gaze swept over the luxurious penthouse, the sweeping views of the city. "I belong somewhere much, much better." Without another word, Eleanor ended the call. The silence of the penthouse was profound, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with a newfound resolve, a quiet determination to act on the clarity she had found. Eleanor awoke to the soft glow of morning light filtering through the penthouse windows, illuminating the tasteful grandeur of the suite. The memory of the previous night's dramatic revelation at dinner was not a distant echo, but a vibrant, immediate presence in her mind. The look on Serena's face, the bewildered shock on Ethan's, the quiet deference of Mr. Henderson, it all replayed with satisfying clarity. She felt a lightness, a freedom she hadn't realized she was missing, now that the colossal weight of her secret had finally been lifted. She made her way to the small, elegant kitchen area of the suite, where a coffee maker stood ready. Pouring a steaming cup, she moved to the living room, settling into a plush armchair that offered a panoramic view of the city waking up. The city, a vibrant tapestry of glass and steel, seemed to pulse with the very ambition that had fueled her for so long. She picked up her phone. The incessant stream of missed calls and calculating texts from Ethan and Serena was still there, a digital testament to their frantic night. Ethan's messages were a messy tangle of emotions: guilt, confusion, and a burgeoning sense of betrayal. "Mom, how could you? All those years? Why did you lie to me?" He couldn't grasp the concept that her discretion was not a lie, but a deliberate choice, a lesson she had painstakingly learned from Arthur. He saw her secrecy as a personal affront, a deception, rather than a strategy for character building. He worried about his own perceived foolishness, and perhaps the public humiliation of not knowing his own mother's true status. Serena's texts, on the other hand, were a cold study in opportunism. The initial flurry of angry accusations had quickly evaporated, replaced by a calculating precision. "Eleanor, we must discuss this immediately. What are the terms? We need to talk about family dynamics, now that this situation has come to light. We should meet at your earliest convenience to map out the future." The subtext was blatant. Dollar signs were dancing in her head, and any lingering contempt had been swallowed whole by the promise of potential wealth. She had effortlessly transitioned from dismissing Eleanor as a ridiculous old woman to viewing her as a valuable asset to be leveraged. Eleanor slowly sipped her coffee, its rich aroma filling the air. This entire charade, this grand secret she had maintained for over a decade, had been, in essence, a test. A test of character, of integrity, of true familial love, unmarred by the distorting lens of perceived wealth or poverty. Her family, she realized with a sigh that was more weary than sad, had failed it spectacularly. Just as she finished her coffee, there was a discreet knock at the door. Mr. Henderson entered, pushing a gleaming service cart laden with a perfect breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, Benedict, and another pot of her preferred Earl Grey tea. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance," he greeted her with his usual quiet respect. "Everything to your liking?" "Perfect, Mr. Henderson. As always," Eleanor replied, gesturing to the table. "Could you spare a moment?" "I was curious about the aftermath of last night's dinner." Mr. Henderson inclined his head. "Certainly, Mrs. Vance. After your departure, there was, as you might imagine, a rather stunned silence. Young Mr. Vance seemed genuinely bewildered. He kept asking about how long and what it meant, displaying a measure of genuine confusion. He seemed to be trying to piece together a new reality. Eleanor nodded. That part she expected. "And Serena?" she asked, her voice deliberately neutral. Mr. Henderson's lips tightened almost imperceptibly, a subtle indication of his professional assessment. Mrs. Vance. Mrs. Hayes's reaction was immediate and direct. She inquired about the property values of the hotel, whether you owned other establishments, if there were corporate roles available. She specifically asked for my business card, and then, rather abruptly, if I knew of any managerial positions open across your portfolio that she might be suitable for, given her extensive hospitality experience. Eleanor suppressed a knowing smile. Serena's fleeting pretense of hospitality experience, a 2-week unpaid internship at a boutique bed and breakfast a decade ago, had been a source of much eye-rolling in the family. That she would attempt to leverage it now, in a bid for a managerial position in a luxury hotel chain, was a testament to her audacity. The thin veneer of her supposed sophistication had cracked instantly, revealing the raw ambition beneath. Alone again with her pristine breakfast, Eleanor mused on Serena's blatant grasping. Serena valued the trappings of wealth, the grand hotels, the designer clothes, the European trips. But she had utterly failed to value the person who had quietly, diligently, and with immense personal sacrifice, created that wealth. It wasn't about the legacy or the effort. It was only about what could be extracted. Her thoughts then drifted to Leo. He was the innocent, caught in the crossfire of his calculating mother and his weak-willed father. He, at least, deserved a better path, a clearer understanding of genuine value beyond superficial appearances. With a fresh wave of determination, Eleanor opened her laptop and accessed her secure online portal. The screen glowed, displaying the true scope of her hidden empire. 12 hotels, including the Grand Regent, 37 rental properties, and a liquid net worth of just over $68 million. It was a testament to Arthur's initial investment and her own shrewd, patient stewardship. She then began to compile a different kind of list. It was a meticulous record of every way she had quietly, anonymously subsidized her family's life. Even as they treated her with disdain, the seemingly generous loan she'd given Ethan for his down payment on their first home, which she had secretly paid off within 2 years, the monthly allowance she'd sent, disguised as a small pension that covered Serena's exorbitant car payments, Leo's private school tuition, which she'd arranged to be paid directly from an anonymous trust, sparing Ethan and Serena the cost. The small, private office space Ethan used for his floundering startup, paid for, discreetly through one of her smaller LLCs. Even the annual rental of their beloved summer lake house, which they believed they were getting at a family discount, was in fact fully paid for by Eleanor through another intermediary. Every comfort, every financial break, every seemingly fortuitous easing of their burdens had been her doing, and in return, she had received condescension, neglect, and outright scorn. The irony was bitter, but it solidified her resolve. Eleanor closed her laptop with a soft click. Her breakfast lay untouched, but her mind was clearer than the morning sky outside. Tomorrow, she decided, all of it would change. If Eleanor's journey of quiet strength and dramatic revelations is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss a single moment of what happens next. Eleanor began her day with a series of phone calls, each one purposeful, each word carefully chosen. The champagne flute from the night before was now replaced by a cup of tea, the grand view from the penthouse offering a serene backdrop to her unilateral decisions. Her first call was to Mr. Davies, her trusted attorney, a man whose steady hand had navigated the labyrinthine legalities of her empire for years without ever betraying her secret. "Good morning, Mr. Davies," Eleanor began, her voice calm and clear. "I need you to initiate some changes, effective immediately. I want to transition all existing family arrangements related to properties and financial subsidies to standard market rates." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I'd like these changes to be fully implemented within 30 days. Please prepare the necessary termination notices for all current agreements." Mr. Davies, a man of few words but sharp intellect, responded with characteristic efficiency. "Understood. Mrs. Vance. I will begin drafting the notices this morning. This will affect the rental properties, the commercial lease for Mr. Hayes's office, and the outstanding mortgage note, correct?" "Precisely," Eleanor confirmed. "And please ensure all contractual obligations are met, but no more. Let there be no doubt as to the new terms. Mr. Davies, understanding the profound implications of this shift, simply agreed to prepare everything. He knew this wasn't an act of spite, but a considered reevaluation of long-standing, unspoken agreements. Her next call was to Miss Green, the director of the discreet educational foundation that had been funding Leo's private school scholarship for the past 4 years. Eleanor had set it up carefully, ensuring Leo's parents believed it was a merit-based award, entirely separate from any family connection. Miss Green, good morning. Regarding Leo's scholarship, it will continue, of course, Eleanor stated, her resolve firm. However, I now require that the funding source becomes transparent. The anonymous benefactor will reveal herself. Please inform the school and the parents that the Vance Foundation will now be explicitly listed as the scholarship provider. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Mrs. Vance. Miss Green finally managed. Her voice hushed. Are you certain? This will be quite a shock to the Hayes family, considering their previous understanding. I am quite certain, Miss Green, Eleanor affirmed, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. I believe it's time for some clarity in all matters. Please proceed with the necessary paperwork. Miss Green, sensing the unshakable determination in Eleanor's tone, promised to handle the transition with the utmost discretion, while acknowledging the monumental impact it would have. Eleanor's final call was to Miss Ramirez, the sharp and no-nonsense manager of her extensive portfolio of residential properties. Miss Ramirez handled everything from high-end urban apartments to quaint suburban homes, including the modest house where Ethan, Serena, and Leo resided. Miss Ramirez, I need you to convert Ethan Hayes' mortgage note from its current 5% interest rate to a standard market rate. Effective immediately, Eleanor instructed. Her voice unwavering. Please prepare the new terms and send them out today. Miss Ramirez, typically unflappable, voiced a rare note of concern. Mrs. Vance, with the current market rates, Mr. Hayes' payments would more than double, possibly even triple. Are you sure? That's a very significant increase for a young family. I am quite sure, Miss Ramirez, Eleanor replied, her tone softening slightly, yet remaining firm. Sometimes, people need to learn to sail without training wheels. It is time for Ethan to stand on his own 2 feet, completely. Please process it. The manager, understanding that Eleanor's decision was final, promised to execute the changes promptly. By noon, all the necessary arrangements were in motion. Within a month, the carefully constructed illusion of Ethan's comfortable life would begin to unravel. His mortgage payments, which he believed were just a fortunate arrangement, would surge. His office rent, subsidized by his mother's improved job, would revert to commercial rates. Serena's leased luxury car, which Eleanor had secretly covered through a series of shell payments, would either need to be paid for in full by Serena or returned. And the cherished summer lake house, a family tradition they believed they were renting at an incredible discount, would simply be unavailable, having been Eleanor's anonymous gift for years. Eleanor felt no anger, no vindictive glee in these actions. What she felt was something colder, more permanent, a logical consequence, a stark reality. It wasn't about punishment, it was about re-establishing balance, about ensuring that every comfort and advantage they enjoyed would now be earned, or lost. Later that afternoon, Ethan called again. His voice, though still somewhat confused, now carried a new undertone, a desperate conciliatory note. Mom, Serena, she feels terrible about last night. She wants to apologize. Can we talk? Really talk? As a family? Eleanor leaned back, a faint smile playing on her lips. Does she feel terrible about what she said, Ethan? Or about the financial prospects she now perceives to be at stake? She asked, her directness cutting through his pretense. A strained silence followed, confirming her suspicion. Mom, please, Ethan pleaded, skirting the direct question. Don't do anything rash. We can fix this. Ethan, we have incompatible values, Eleanor stated, her voice quiet but firm. You and Serena have consistently shown me where your priorities lie. I'm not doing anything rash. I am, in fact, doing exactly what your father would have wanted." She paused, letting the full weight of her words sink in. "I am giving you the chance to stand on your own, to truly build something of your own merit, unburdened by hidden support. It's time for you to learn what it truly means to be a man of character." Eleanor listened for a moment longer, hearing Ethan's confused protests, but her decision was made. She ended the call, resolute in the belief that she had not chosen a path of retribution, but one of difficult, necessary truth. That evening, Eleanor descended to the Grand Regent's opulent main restaurant, not as a peripheral guest, but as its undisputed owner. She wore a new designer dress, a rich emerald green that flowed elegantly, making her feel not just adorned, but truly expressed. Every member of the staff, from the maitre d' to the youngest server, greeted her with a quiet reverence and genuine respect. There were no sidelong glances, no veiled condescension, only impeccable service and acknowledgement of her status. She felt, for the first time in years, completely free, free from the burden of her secret, free to simply be herself, living authentically in the world she had quietly built. The food tasted exquisite, the wine perfectly paired, and the atmosphere, a symphony of hushed conversations and clinking silverware, felt like home. 3 weeks later, the phone call came. Ethan's voice, usually full of a forced cheerfulness or mild irritation, was now strained, exhausted, and tinged with a raw desperation. "Mom?" he began, without preamble. "What did you do?" Eleanor braced herself, knowing exactly what he was referring to. "Good morning, Ethan," she replied, her voice calm and even. "To what do you refer?" "Our mortgage, Mom! It's tripled. They sold our loan to some new company, and the terms are completely different." "How did this happen?" His voice rose with each question, spiraling into a frustrated panic. "Did you ever read the original loan paperwork, Ethan?" Eleanor asked gently, her question loaded with implication. The original agreement had been carefully structured, a non-standard note that, once transferred, reverted to market rates. It was designed so that Ethan and Serena, with their actual income, could never have truly qualified for the house without her silent subsidy. He had signed it without truly understanding the leverage she held, a leverage he had never known existed. A pause, thick with dawning realization, hung in the air. "I don't know, I just signed it, Mom," he mumbled, the confidence draining from his voice. "The payments were affordable, that's all I cared about. And what about your office rent?" Eleanor prompted, moving on to the next domino. "That too." "It tripled, Mom. And Serena's car lease, they raised it to $800 a month." $800. "You did this, didn't you?" "All of it. You've been subsidizing our entire life, haven't you?" The realization, once vague, was now a concrete, terrifying monster. "I enabled you both to live beyond your means, yes," Eleanor confirmed, her voice devoid of accusation, simply stating a fact. "Without you realizing it, every comfort, every perceived advantage you enjoyed, was a direct result of my quiet support." Ethan's voice cracked, thick with emotion. "But why, Mom? Why would you do that? And then why would you take it all away?" He sounded like a lost child, bewildered by a parent's incomprehensible actions. "Handouts don't build character, Ethan," Eleanor reiterated, using the mantra she had adopted from Arthur. "Your father believed that true love sometimes means allowing people to struggle, to face the consequences of their own choices, so they can learn and grow. I watched him do it with his own students, and I applied that wisdom to you." "But you made everything harder," Ethan cried out, the accusation sharp. "You watched me stress for years, worry about every penny, trying to make ends meet. When you could have just helped, you could have told me. And how many times?" "Ethan," Eleanor countered, her voice now edged with steel. "Did Serena make disparaging comments about my modest life? How many times did she exclude me from important family events, or dismiss me as an old woman who had no place in your sophisticated world? How many times did you sit silently by, letting her diminish your own mother, because you implicitly agreed with her assessment of my financial standing?" She didn't wait for an answer. Serena absolutely meant every word, Ethan. You both felt superior, didn't you? Superior because you believed I was struggling, because you thought my life was so much less glamorous than yours. My perceived poverty was your comfort, your proof of your own success. There was a muffled sound, then Ethan's voice, hushed and defeated. Serena's at home crying, "Mom, she just found out that everything you did, all the changes, are completely legal. We might lose the house, Mom." The whisper was barely audible, thick with despair. Eleanor felt a pang, not of regret, but of a firm, unwavering sadness. "Then you will downsize, Ethan," she said calmly, offering practical advice rather than sympathy. "You will trade the BMW for a reliable used car. Leo will go to public school, where he will learn that education is about more than prestige. There is dignity in living within one's means, Ethan, a lesson your father and I learned years ago, long before any of this wealth came into our lives. It's a lesson you, unfortunately, never had to learn." She paused, allowing him to absorb her words, the truth of his predicament. The phone line was silent, save for the faint sound of Ethan's ragged breathing. "I'm not abandoning you, Ethan," Eleanor stated, her voice softer now, having made her point. "I'm giving you an opportunity to show me, and yourself, who you truly are without the complications of my financial support. True love, genuine family connection, and self-respect, these things cannot be bought with money. They are earned through character, through honesty, and through mutual respect. That's what your father taught me, and that's what I hope you will eventually learn." She ended the call, leaving Ethan to ponder her words in the uncomfortable silence of his unraveling life. That evening, as Eleanor was preparing for a quiet dinner in her suite, a message from the front desk informed her that her grandson, Leo, was in the lobby, accompanied by his babysitter, Miss Evans. Her heart warmed instantly. This was an unexpected, but welcome, surprise. She went down to meet them, and Leo, his face etched with a worry unusual for a 12-year-old, rushed into her arms. "Grandma, I heard you moved to the hotel. Are you sad? Mom and Dad are fighting a lot, and I thought you might be sad too." His concern was palpable. Innocent and pure, Eleanor hugged him tightly. "No, sweet boy, I'm not sad," she reassured him, smoothing his hair. "Come with me, Miss Evans. Would you care to join us for a light dinner, or perhaps wait downstairs? Leo and I will be in my suite." Miss Evans, understanding the need for a private conversation, politely declined, promising to wait. Leading Leo by the hand, Eleanor brought him up to her penthouse suite. His eyes, already wide with curiosity, grew even wider as he stepped into the expansive living room with its breathtaking city views. "Wow, Grandma," he breathed, pressing his nose against the glass, gazing at the twinkling urban landscape below. "This is amazing," Eleanor smiled, watching his innocent wonder. After he had taken in the view, she guided him to a comfortable sofa. "So, what's on your mind, little one?" Leo, with the directness only a child possesses, looked at her earnestly. "Are you mad at Mom and Dad, Grandma?" Eleanor considered her answer carefully. "Mad isn't quite the right word, Leo," she replied softly. "I'm disappointed. Disappointed by some of the choices they've made, and some of the ways they've treated me. Did they hurt you?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "Yes, they did," she admitted, refusing to sugarcoat the truth for him. "But I want you to know, Leo, that you never, ever hurt me." Not once. She reached out and squeezed his hand, a silent promise of her unwavering love for him. Leo, however, had another, more pressing question, echoing words he'd undoubtedly heard from his parents. "Mom says you're really rich now, that you own this whole hotel. Is that true?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes, Leo, it is true." She took a deep breath, deciding to explain it to him as simply and honestly as she could. "I've had this hotel, and other businesses, for a long time. I kept it a secret because I wanted to protect your mom and dad. I wanted them to build their own lives, to love me for who I was, not for what I had." Leo listened intently, processing her words with a wisdom that belied his age. When she finished, he looked up at her, his bright eyes clear and untroubled. "That's silly, Grandma," he said, matter-of-factly. "I love you because you're my grandma. Money doesn't matter." Eleanor felt a powerful surge of emotion, a wave of tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. His profound simplicity, his unvarnished truth, resonated deeper than any apology or explanation she could ever receive from Ethan or Serena. The child understood a fundamental truth that his parents, blinded by materialism and status, had completely failed to grasp. In that moment, Leo was a beacon of pure, unconditional love, a confirmation that not all was lost. Later that evening, after Leo had gone home with Miss Evans, Eleanor picked up the phone and called Mr. Davies. "Mr. Davies," she began, "I need to add a new provision to my will, effective immediately. It concerns Leo." She then meticulously outlined the creation of a substantial trust fund for her grandson. This fund would cover the entirety of his education, from private school through university, and provide him with a secure financial foundation, accessible only when he reached the age of 30. This was not a blank check, but a carefully structured safeguard for his future. "And Mr. Davies," Eleanor added, her voice firm, "there must be a crucial clause. If at any point Ethan or Serena attempt to access, borrow against, or in any way diminish these funds for their own benefit before Leo turns 30, the entire trust will be immediately dissolved and redirected to the children's charities of my choice." Mr. Davies, accustomed to Eleanor's foresight, simply noted down her instructions, recognizing the protective wisdom behind her decision. "Understood, Mrs. Vance," he confirmed. "It will be drafted and legally binding within the week." Eleanor hung up the phone, a quiet sense of peace settling over her. She knew that sometimes, the most loving thing a parent or grandparent could do was not to give endless handouts, but to create boundaries, to protect those they loved from their own worst impulses, even if it meant withholding immediate comfort for long-term growth. She had done what she could to set Leo on a different path, a path free from the corrosive influence of unearned wealth and the superficiality it often brought. 6 months quietly slipped by, marking the passage of time since Eleanor had, in her own words, allowed her family to sail without training wheels. During this period, Eleanor had fully embraced her authentic life. Her days were now a blend of purposeful engagement, overseeing her expanding business empire with the expertise she had honed over years, and dedicating significant time to her passion project, volunteering at a local women's shelter. It was there, amidst the stories of struggle and resilience, that she found a different kind of fulfillment. One afternoon, while assisting a young woman named Sarah Bell with some paperwork, a casual comment caught Eleanor's ear. "You know, Mrs. Vance," Sarah said, her voice soft but sincere. "Your son, Ethan? He's been coming here, offering free tax help to everyone. Even helped me untangle some old debts. He's really good at it. And so kind, especially for someone who looks like he's been through the ringer himself." Eleanor felt a quiet warmth spread through her chest. Ethan. Helping others. Freely. Even as his own financial world had crumbled. It was a tangible sign that Arthur's values, the very foundation of her own life, were perhaps taking root in her son after all. Helping others, especially those in crisis, without expectation of reward. That was the essence of true character. A lesson she and Arthur had always held dear. Later that week, driving by Ethan's old house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Eleanor saw the dreaded "For Sale" sign planted firmly in the manicured lawn. The windows were dark, the curtains drawn, an empty shell of the life they had carefully constructed, largely on her invisible foundation. The house of cards she had inadvertently built for him had finally collapsed, just as she had known it would. A pang of melancholy struck her, but it was overshadowed by a sense of inevitability, a necessary ending for a new beginning. Then, the call came. His voice was worn, tinged with a weariness that had been absent before, but beneath it, Eleanor detected a nascent strength, a newfound maturity. "Mom," he began, I just wanted to call. A lot has happened." "I saw the house, Ethan," Eleanor said softly, anticipating his news. A sigh escaped him. Yeah. We lost it. We're renting a small apartment now. It's cramped, but we're making it work. He paused, then continued, a raw honesty in his tone. I was angry at first, so angry, and ashamed. Ashamed of how I'd lived, how I'd treated you, how much I didn't know. But I understand now, Mom. All those lessons you tried to teach us. All those things Dad used to say. I get it. Eleanor listened, her heart aching for him, yet filled with a cautious hope. And Leo? She asked. Leo's he's doing great. He calls it an adventure. He misses his old room. But he's made friends at the new school. He's a good kid, Mom. There was a genuine note of pride in Ethan's voice when he spoke of his son. Then came the news Eleanor had half expected, though it still brought a pang of sorrow. Serena and we're getting a divorce. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment. Oh, Ethan, I am truly sorry to hear that. Don't be, Mom, he said, his voice firm. It couldn't get better. Without all the money, without the pretense, we saw each other for who we really were. She saw me for what I really was. Not some big shot, just a guy with a decent job and a mortgage I couldn't afford. And I saw her. All she wanted me to do was fight you, to demand what she thought was ours. But I realized, Mom, you owed us nothing. Nothing at all. He took a shaky breath. I told her our values were completely incompatible. She was never going to change. Where is she now? Eleanor inquired. She moved back in with her parents. She's bitter. Blames you for everything, naturally. But I'm not letting her anymore. Eleanor heard the sincerity in his voice, the conviction that had been absent for so long. So, what are you doing now, Ethan? Working hard. Really hard. I've taken on extra clients for the tax business, and I'm looking into teaching accounting at a community college on the side. Leo's at the public school, and honestly, he's thriving. He loves the soccer team, and, he added, with a hint of self-deprecating humor, I traded in the BMW for a used Honda. It gets me where I need to go. We're making it work, Mom. Within our means. There was a pause, a moment of hesitant vulnerability. Mom, he began, his voice softer. I know I might not have the right to ask. After everything, but Leo misses you terribly. He keeps asking about you. Would you be willing to see him? Eleanor felt her own throat tighten. Of course, Ethan, she said, without hesitation. I would love to see Leo, more than anything. She then added, her voice regaining its firm resolve. But there's one condition, Ethan. I will no longer hide my success. I will no longer pretend to be less than I am. If I am visiting, or if Leo visits me, it will be in the open, as I truly am. I understand, Mom, he said, and this time, she believed him. And honestly, I'm proud of you. I really am. I was so embarrassed by your modest lifestyle before, so worried about what people thought. I was such a fool. I know that now. I'm proud of the woman you are. Mom. Eleanor closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It wasn't the kind of pride Serena had craved, hollow and superficial. This was real. This was a son, truly seeing his mother, perhaps for the very first time. 2 days after their conversation, Ethan brought Leo to the Grand Regent for lunch. The moment Leo spotted Eleanor in the elegant lobby, his face lit up, and he launched himself into her arms, a joyful embrace that warmed her to her core. Ethan stood back, a faint, almost shy smile on his face, observing the genuine affection between his son and mother. They settled onto the sun-drenched terrace of the hotel's renowned restaurant. Leo, a picture of carefree contentment, chattered happily about his new public school, the friends he'd made, and his passion for the soccer team. He seemed lighter, more relaxed than Eleanor had seen him in years, unburdened by the unspoken tensions that had once permeated his home life. With an age-appropriate understanding, he even touched upon his parents' divorce. Daddy seems happier now, he observed simply, a testament to Ethan's own burgeoning peace. Leo then turned to Eleanor, his eyes wide with admiration. "Mom says you own this whole hotel, Grandma. And lots of other places." "That's so cool." He paused, a thoughtful look on his young face. "Maybe when I grow up, I could work at one of your hotels. Or maybe I could be a teacher, like Grandpa Arthur." Eleanor's heart swelled. She hadn't realized how deeply Ethan must have spoken about his father, how vividly he must have kept Arthur's memory alive for Leo to express such a desire. It was a beautiful, unexpected echo of the legacy she had tried so hard to uphold. 2 years later, Eleanor, now 71, had found a profound sense of peace and self-worth in her authentic life. Her business thrived, and her volunteer work at the women's shelter continued to be a source of deep satisfaction. She no longer had to navigate the delicate dance of deception and discretion. She was simply Eleanor Vance, a successful businesswoman, a loving mother, and a cherished grandmother. Ethan and Leo had established a new routine. Weekly Sunday lunches at the Grand Regent, a tradition that brought immense joy to Eleanor. Ethan had undergone a remarkable transformation. He was no longer the financially stressed, passively compliant man he once was. He lived within his means, diligently managing his finances, and, most importantly, raising Leo with the strong, compassionate values Arthur had championed. Their small apartment, the used Honda, Leo's public school, these were now sources of pride, not shame. On the second anniversary of that fateful dinner, what Eleanor now affectionately called her real birthday, the day she was truly reborn, Ethan and Leo arrived with gifts, not extravagant presents, but humble, heartfelt tokens that spoke volumes. Ethan presented Eleanor with a beautifully framed photograph, a candid shot of her laughing, taken by Leo during one of their Sunday lunches on the terrace. The silver frame bore an engraved message, simple yet profound. To Eleanor Vance, a successful businesswoman, a loving mother, a cherished grandmother. With pride and gratitude. Ethan and Leo. Eleanor's eyes welled up. It was the public acknowledgement, the genuine respect she had unknowingly craved for so long, now freely given by her son. Then, Leo, his face beaming, handed her a small, handmade cloth book, crudely stitched but bursting with vibrant crayon drawings. "The story of Grandma Eleanor," the cover proclaimed. Inside, he had painstakingly drawn pictures of her hotels, of him playing soccer, of Ethan working. On the final page, beneath a drawing of Eleanor surrounded by stick figures of her family, was a caption, written in his child's careful hand. "Grandma Eleanor learned that being rich means having people who love you just because you're you." Eleanor was overwhelmed. The sincerity, the pure, unadulterated love, encapsulated in these simple gifts, was more valuable than all her millions. This was the acknowledgement of her true worth, the core of who she was, a worth she had hidden for so long beneath layers of perceived mediocrity. "I remember thinking you were so cruel, Mom," Ethan confessed, his voice tinged with a distant echo of past pain. "When all those changes hit, I thought you were punishing me. I was so angry, so self-righteous." He met her gaze, his eyes clear. "But now I understand. Kind in the only way that would actually help us." He took a deep breath. "I take full responsibility for my past failures, for letting Serena treat you that way, for not appreciating your sacrifices, for being so blind to what truly mattered." He then shared a revelation that brought a fresh wave of emotion to Eleanor. "You know, Mom," Ethan continued, a new fire in his eyes, "after everything, I want to do something meaningful. I've started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, specifically offering free financial planning services to families going through divorce. It's tough, but I feel like I can genuinely help them avoid some of the mistakes I made and prevent the financial struggles from tearing them apart completely." Eleanor reached across the table and took his hand, her eyes shining with pride. "That's wonderful, Ethan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be so proud. If you ever need advice or help setting up a nonprofit, you know who to call." As they sat there, 2 generations connected by a shared history of struggle and growth, Eleanor watched Arthur's true legacy unfold. It wasn't in the hotels or the properties, but in the principles of contribution, character, and genuine self-worth, finally guiding the next generation. The wealth was merely a tool, as Arthur had always intended, for building something good, and in this new, authentic life, Eleanor finally understood that she had, indeed, built something truly good.